49ers update here. Flying through Denver to Fresno. Fresno happens to be where Davante Adams played his college football. And according to Jeremy Fowler, Adams is intrigued by a return to the West Coast. He's from East Palo Alto, right? So he is from the Bay Area. Davante Adams is intrigued by a return to the West Coast if the Jets release him this offseason. And it actually does appear likely that the Jets won't be able to hold on to Davante Adams past this season. He's got a $38 million cap hit that New York is not particularly interested in picking up, and nothing is guaranteed remaining on Davante Adams' contract. Taking a look at over the cap, he's under contract for 2 more seasons for the Jets, but at age 32, obviously moving toward the tail end of his career. There was the movement from Vegas to the Jets following Aaron Rodgers last year. You look at the leadership changes in New York, I think it definitely is possible that the Jets either release him because it would save them a lot of money and wouldn't cost them anything. They're not on the hook for any of the signing bonus that the Raiders gave him, or there's a chance that the Jets, if they can run some kind of auction where teams could get in line for Davante Adams' services, then they could trade him for a lower round draft pick, and then that would probably necessitate a contract renegotiation from an acquiring team for Davante Adams. 2025, $35 million base salary. 2026, $35.6 million base salary. So the cap numbers for the Jets, because of that massive base salary, are over $38 million, which at this level of production that we saw from Davante Adams last year, I know there were a lot of problems with the Jets and the Jets offense, but at this level of production, that cap hit certainly it is not commensurate with the production that Davante Adams is giving on the field. But you look at what would the ideal receiving core for Brock Purdy be, and I think that a separator like Brandon Ayuk, when healthy at the X position, obviously that is a dream match for Brock Purdy. We saw that over the course of the 2023 season. George Kittle at tight end, that's great for the 49ers. I consider tight ends to be members of the receiving core as well, because the 49ers run that amorphous offense. Christian McCaffrey coming out of the backfield, Jawan Jennings, he's also a really good separator. The odd man out really has been Deebo Samuel. Debo's playing the Z. He's not a great separator. He's still under contract, but this is his lame duck season. The 49ers obviously consider Deebo Samuel a valuable luxury, but as far as the style with which Brock Purdy has played, with which they try to deliver, you look at the average depth of target over the years for Purdy. 2022 was 7.8 yards. 2023 was 8.6 yards. 2024, it jumped up to 9 yards per target. That this offense is pushing the ball further and further downfield. So you're looking for wideouts that are more pure wideouts by definition year after year. I mean, in the Jimmy Garoppolo era, the 49ers definitely had a lot of use for catch and run bulldozing style like Deebo Samuel. But now this version of the 49ers is looking more and more toward the intermediates, toward the deep passes. Brock Purdy actually threw the fewest percentage of throws last year behind the line of scrimmage. I actually think that needs to increase. I think that will increase once Christian McCaffrey is back and once the 49ers can figure a way to push the running back game back into the fold of the offense. But in general, the timing aspect of this offense is reliant on X-type wide receivers, and obviously Davante Adams is one of them. So this is all contingent on the Jets actually being interested in ridding themselves of Davante Adams. But Jeremy Fowler of ESPN mentioned that the $38 million cap hit is untenable for New York. It seemed like it was a rental kind of situation last year for Aaron Rodgers, and now the Jets, I mean, obviously rebuilding a whole heck of a lot with an entire staff change over there in New York. They may be ready to move on from the 32-year-old receiver who is from East Palo Alto, went to Fresno State. We're about to fly from Denver to Fresno. Hopefully the mic is working here because I got to talk kind of quiet. Denver Airport Lounge doesn't have one of those private rooms, but this definitely worth a little Saturday morning live. Daniel Garcia said the 49ers could use Davante on a cheap deal if he's available. Just a thought, nothing serious. Well, yeah, this is just a thought, and he would instantly upgrade the 49ers receiving room. And, maybe you're trying to layer depth at every single position in the NFL. The 49ers have been interested in every single good player that has come available over the course of the Lynch Shanahan tenure. They should be interested in every single good player who comes available. Davante Adams is potentially going to be available, and Jeremy Fowler has said that Davante would be open to playing for the 49ers, Rams, or Chargers if he did become available. So you obviously look into it. Listen, the 49ers last year were dead last in average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. That was the biggest weakness of this offense. It wasn't pass protection. It wasn't they won Brock Purdy. You could say that they were a little short on running back talent at times because of Christian McCaffrey's injury and then Jordan Mason's injury. And then obviously Isaac Guerrero got hurt late in the year, so they had to use Patrick Taylor. So there are obviously problems throughout the offense, but the biggest one was the sheer lack of separation that the 49ers were generating from the receiving room, which is why you're constantly looking to layer talent at that position. And it might end up being a situation where Davante Adams can pick where he signs, and maybe he signs for a discount, and maybe the 49ers can fit him into their cap situation. All I know is that Lynch and Shanahan have left no stone unturned over the course of their tenure as far as investigating the ability, the chance to bring in premier talent. They've done so multiple times. They've got a star-studded roster. Christian McCaffrey's on this team. Nobody thought that was possible before the 2022 season, but it did happen. And Davante Adams is from the Bay Area, from East Palo Alto, and he went to Fresno State. Maybe we make another video about this in a couple hours once I land in Fresno and I see all that Bulldog memorabilia up on the wall in the airport. So that is the news of the morning. That's from Jeremy Fowler, saying that Davante Adams is quote unquote intrigued by a return to the West Coast if the Jets do release him. And the numbers, I can tell you on the contract, I know I can't pull up the screen right now, but you can go check out his page on Over the Cap. The numbers for Davante Adams over these final 2 years, $35.6 million base salaries. None of that is guaranteed. The way this works is that the Jets acquired Davante's contract, so the Raiders paid for his signing bonus. The dead money went to the Raiders. The Jets acquired the non-guaranteed portion of his contract in 2025 and 2026. $35.6 million is an extremely large base salary. So the Jets can either decide to keep him, which is unlikely, and convert that base salary to signing bonus to limit the near-term cap hit. That's what a team that would be interested in keeping Davante Adams would do entering his age 33 season, or the Jets can trade him away or just release him. The release wouldn't cost the Jets much at all, just because there's nothing guaranteed on Davante Adams' contract. But they do have that team control. There is value in that. He still is a good football player. Obviously, was the best in the game a couple years ago. So with that contractual control, the Jets could theoretically force teams to line up for Davante Adams and see what kind of draft capital they can get in return. In either situation, the 49ers will be interested. I don't know how interested they would be if they had to give up draft capital, but they will be interested to some degree just because they're interested in every single good player coming available. And when we cannot hammer this home enough, separation or lack thereof was the 49ers' biggest issue last season by far. The biggest issue for this team on offense was the lack of separation. They averaged 3.1 yards at the time of catch or incompletion of separation. A team like the Chiefs, which was near the top of the league, was well over 4 yards, near 5 yards of average separation at the time of catch or incompletion. I don't think it was the best year for Kyle Shanahan, but I certainly know that it was not the best year for the 49ers personnel, especially at the wide receiver room with the injury to Brandon Ayuk. Christian McCaffrey helped separation. Now, a lot of this should be repaired just by whom the 49ers return, but you're always looking to try to get better in the National Football League. And if Davante Adams comes available, you investigate. If Myles Garrett comes available, you investigate. That's how the 49ers have built this roster ever since 2017, and we just so happen to be on our way to Fresno while we get this Davante Adams news. Also wanted to talk a little bit about Gus Bradley, 49ers new assistant. I'm guessing he's going to get an assistant head coach title as a former head coach. You know, I've got a friend who's a coach, and I'm just going to read what he texted me about Gus Bradley and the 49ers hire. And then we're going to talk about some players on the Colts who would be candidates to sign with the 49ers since Bradley's familiar with them. Remember Brandon Staley last year? There were some signings to San Francisco that were Brandon Staley influenced, including Leonard Floyd, whom Staley had coached before, Isaac Yiadom, whom Staley had coached before. But this is a signing from a similar mold, except that Gus Bradley is eminently familiar with the 4-3 that San Francisco runs. And that, I think, tie allows Kyle Shanahan to rest easy with Robert Saleh to bring this defense back to its roots. Anyway, here's what my friend, I'm not going to name names, but this is a coach, very successful coach, said about Gus Bradley. I'm just going to read this word for word. I like the Gus Bradley hire. I've always been interested in how older former coordinators and head coaches go about a new role that doesn't require running the whole defense. There's a lot of wisdom to tap into, and their wisdom is no longer constrained by having to be the decision maker. For some reason, it almost seems to be liberating because they're now free to express creative ideas without having to worry about the consequences. I think it helps to reset the passion and approach for a coach to become an idea guy again, an idea guy. Because being the decision maker, sometimes you just sift through the ideas in your head mentally and never verbally bring them to the table. From Saleh's perspective, Gus Bradley helps him lean on someone who has called the defense more recently than he has. Because remember, Jeff Ulbrich called the defense for Robert Saleh in New York. Gus Bradley can bridge the gap and advise on how he dealt with any recent league-wide trends that Saleh hasn't yet had to coordinate against. Then from Kyle Shanahan's perspective, it gives him a clear defensive coordinator candidate in the bullpen. And scheme aside, it always helps to have a former head coach on the staff. So it's good for Bradley to reinvigorate himself as a coach. It's good for Saleh to lean on a guy whom he knows well and shares a lot of defensive terminology with. Good for the organization in general, with former head coaching experience and future defensive coordinator potential. That is the evaluation on Gus Bradley, who's joining Robert Saleh's staff with the 49ers from a current coach, a very successful current coach. So I think that gets into a little bit of the nitty gritty as far as how things might work behind the scenes. But like I said, in general, yesterday, the 49ers now have two head coaches on the defensive coaching staff. So if Kyle Shanahan was stressed out about defensive screw ups, especially on the coaching front last year, he doesn't have to be nearly as concerned about that anymore. Gus Bradley and Robert Saleh are going to have that on lock. That brings us to the players that Gus Bradley most recently coached as the coordinator of the Colts. You know, people are going to bring up DeForest Buckner and Samuel Womack. Both of them were with the Colts, but they're both under contract with Indianapolis. And DeForest Buckner is still one of the best defensive tackles in the game. I'm not sure that Indianapolis is going to be all too excited about letting go of DeForest Buckner with 2 years still on his contract. He's under contract through 2026. By the way, speaking of Fresno, where Davante Adams went to college, where I'm flying to right now, DeForest Buckner lives in Fresno now in the offseason. Maybe I'll see DeForest Buckner right after talking about him in this video. But Samuel Womack, the former 49er, he's actually blossomed into a nice, successful corner in the NFL. He's also under contract for 2025, and I don't see any reason for the Colts to give him up. He's only making $1.1 million, so a lot of good value. Former 49ers and current 49ers DBs picked in the 5th round, those have been money players. Deommodore Lenoir, 5th-round pick. DJ Reed, 5th-round pick. That's somebody that Robert Saleh might potentially bring over. And Samuel Womack, he was a 5th-round pick out of Toledo. But other Colts defenders who are scheduled for free agency, there are a couple on this list that I think are decent chances of being recommended by Gus Bradley to come over to the 49ers. EJ Speed, linebacker, he's the highest paid pending free agent for the Colts, and the 49ers are looking for some linebacker help. Speed is 30 years old. He was making $4 million per year. Then there's Julian Blackmon, the safety. He's a solid player, and Julian Blackmon actually, his contract was set to expire last year with Indianapolis. He went and visited the 49ers. They were thinking about signing another veteran safety. They might have been better off had they actually followed through on signing another veteran safety. Julian Blackmon is going to be a free agent again if the Colts don't re-sign him. And it might be somebody the 49ers can add to that position as a veteran for under $5 million. And with a Gus Bradley recommendation, maybe with Gus Bradley actually being with the 49ers, Julian Blackmon will want to sign with San Francisco this time as opposed to just visiting. Who knows? Gus Bradley might have been the reason he returned to Indianapolis last year. So safety, a position where Jair Brown struggled this past season, where Malik Mustafa is an emerging player, where I think Talanoa Hufanga might not be re-signed. It could be a situation where Julian Blackmon fits well into the 49ers' plans. Then there's a defensive tackle, 29-year-old Taven Bryan for the Colts. He's worked alongside DeForest Buckner. That's going to be a player who probably comes cheaper than somebody like Javon Kinlaw. Taven Bryan made $2 million last year. Kinlaw, we talk about coming over potentially from the Jets. He was a $7.2 million player. To be honest, Kinlaw might be out of the 49ers price range. I think it's somebody, Nick Bosa is very interested in a potential reunion with Javon Kinlaw. I would say that Robert Saleh is definitely interested since he brought him over to the Jets. But look at somebody like Taven Bryan as potential defensive tackle depth if the 49ers decide they need that in free agency at a cheaper price point. Then there's David Odeyingbo, who is a decently productive edge rusher, a lighter edge rusher for the Colts. Not been making all that much. You know, this is a guy coming off of a rookie deal who I don't know what he's going to command on the open market, but if the 49ers are looking for simple edge rushing depth that's familiar with some of their coaching staff, well, look out for David Odeyingbo. David Long, cornerback, Ronnie Harrison, a safety, Trevor Denbo, safety, and Grant Stewart, a linebacker. Those are other minimum salary type of guys who are scheduled to be free agents. Denbo, though, is going to be a restricted free agent. So, yeah, we'll see if the Colts do decide to retain him or place a tender on him. That would make an acquisition for the 49ers much more unlikely. But those are the players that Gus Bradley is familiar with from his time with the Colts. And I think out of those guys, the most likely signee is somebody who already visited the 49ers last year, and that was Julian Blackmon. Mike, can you go ahead and send me Rocket Money? This show is sponsored by Rocket Money. We'll do the ad read for Rocket Money. I know I'm in a lot more difficult situation to do a live, but I'm dedicated to these for you guys, especially when we have some stuff pop up like Davante Adams. Intrigued by the possibility of playing on the West Coast where he is from. Adams still under contract with the Jets, but we talk about Myles Garrett earlier this season. We can talk about Davante Adams now because the 49ers will leave no stone unturned when it comes to checking in on some of these superstar players who can improve their football team. And I can guarantee you, based on the ugly separation numbers that the 49ers put up last year, they can use Davante Adams on their roster moving forward. I do think it's closer to a long shot than it is something that is probable, but the numbers might end up making sense if Davante Adams just wants to end his career closer to home. He didn't have a great season for the Jets last year. There was a lot of offensive frustration for New York down the stretch. That being said, it was ironic because after Robert Saleh got fired, it was their defense, which had led the team over the past 3 years, which really fell off of a cliff. The offense was mediocre throughout. Obviously did a little bit better with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, but the trade from Las Vegas to New York for Davante Adams did not yield the explosiveness that the Jets thought that it might yield when they did make that move in the middle of the season. Now, also remember the 49ers have 10 draft picks. They've got a tight salary cap situation when you project it moving forward. They have surfed the salary cap wave successfully over the course of the Shanahan-Lynch tenure. The reason they've done that is that they've hit on a lot of mid to later round picks successfully. They would like to continue maximizing their chances. The draft is like throwing a bunch of darts up against the wall, so you want to collect as many darts as you possibly can. You will consider sending some darts away if you have a good opportunity to sign a superstar. We've seen that happen in the case of Christian McCaffrey for the 49ers before, but you're not going to indiscriminately be throwing draft picks away to bring players in. It's going to take something special. And I think Davante Adams may still qualify as that, especially in the right situation. I think he's the type of receiver that fits Brock Purdy really well, since the 49ers are pushing the ball downfield more now. But you have to be very careful with the capital that you do spend, because the best way to maintain a cost-controlled roster is through the draft. And the draft is not something where you're guaranteed success with every single pick. It is a crapshoot. The more darts you throw up against the wall, the better chance you have of hitting a bullseye, or at least hitting the board. And that is why maximizing the amount of draft picks that you have is the best way to attain success, because there's only going to be a certain percentage that hits. So you might as well get as many at-bats as possible to make things work. Anyway, this show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $470 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That is rocketmoney.com/gameon, rocketmoney.com/gameon. All right, any questions? Mike, why don't you send me some good questions that you see, since I'm on my phone right now here at the Airport Lounge in Denver. I think this is the most dedicated 49er show that there is. If you think so, hit the like button. If you think so, hit the subscribe button. I don't see anybody else going live from non-private rooms in airport lounges. This is a first for the channel. This is a first for the mic. The mic is doing a great job. Both mics are doing a great job. This mic, the other mic. Here we're here talking Davante Adams, candidate for the 49ers if the Jets decide to part ways with him. I think that would make a lot of 49ers fans excited. It's the same week we're talking about Myles Garrett. And how could you say no to someone who has a Taco Bell in their house? I used to love Taco Bell growing up. Then I found out that it wasn't really the highest quality food, so I've backed off of the Taco Bell. But the order used to be 2 chicken Supreme Gorditas and 2 double-decker tacos. Now I've graduated to finer food like Taqueria Cancun, which is the best burrito in the world. So, but back in the day, growing up in the Central Valley, Taco Bell is one of the spots. Davante Adams is a Taco Bell in his house. So I think that's a reason to support Davante Adams. I mean, 49ers fans could start knocking on his door and asking for the Taco Bell. Could the 49ers sign Davante Adams to a prove-it contract? No, I don't think so. I think that Davante Adams has already proven it. I don't think he's fallen off that far. I think what would have to happen is the Jets would have to obviously want to part ways with him, which seems to be where they're leaning based on the Jeremy Fowler report. Then the Jets would either release him outright, but that would be a dumb move, I think, from New York's perspective. I think Adams is good enough to at least warrant a situation where teams try to line up for his services and try to trade for him. So then I think it would probably cost a lower round pick, and it would necessitate a team renegotiation of his contract. Because right now the base salary is $35.6 million non-guaranteed in each of the next 2 seasons. Obviously, nobody's going to be paying that for Davante Adams based on the recent production. But if he's willing to play ball with you and Jeremy Fowler's report indicates he's willing to play ball with West Coast teams, including the 49ers. Another shout out to East Palo Alto and Fresno. If that is the case, then you might be able to find a team-friendly, flexible contract that works for Davante Adams. Listen, this is a guy that if we watch the receiver series on Netflix, he was extremely frustrated with the Raiders. He just wanted to win. He's going to be 33. Time is ticking. His best chances to win previously have come with the Packers. The 49ers beat those Green Bay Packers. Dante Johnson did a great job against Davante Adams in the snow game. This is a guy who's come frustratingly close, has not quite made it, and if he has a chance to play for a hometown team, which he believes can push him over the top as a wide receiver, maybe he is willing to play ball with the 49ers. You can never say never, especially with this 49ers regime, which has been more aggressive than any other front office in the NFL. Mike asks me, would Adams really be a wide receiver one with the 49ers? He, who is the 49ers wide receiver one at this moment? Like at this moment, if they had to play a game, Brandon Ayuk wouldn't be ready yet. We don't know exactly when he's going to be ready. I would even wager that Brandon Ayuk might miss the first 4 games of next season on PUP just based on how ACL recoveries have gone in the past. Is Ayuk going to be that guy? Is he going to come back on a tear from this ACL tear? No pun intended there. You don't want him to come back on a tear from the ACL tear. He needs to come back playing as one of the leading X receivers in the game for the 49ers to regain their edge in the separation department. And if that doesn't happen, well, this offense is not going to be firing on the cylinders that it fired on in 2023. That's why you want to layer as much talent as possible at the wide receiver position. You'd figure out a way to make it work if you had both Brandon Ayuk and Davante Adams on the football team. That's how the NFL works. It is a talent layering business. You don't worry about, oh, we already have this. If you can find a way to stack the football team with more talent that comes at an affordable price, which this might be unlikely with Davante Adams, but it's definitely possible since he's interested in the 49ers, then you would do that, which is why we talk about the possibility. Somebody asking if Debo would be cut. I don't know. I think they could still try to trade Debo Samuel if something like this happened. Debo Samuel could be a trade candidate for before the deadline, right? He could start the season with the team and then they could see if somebody else would be interested in him. Debo Samuel, the thing is, like, he's a very movable contract because the 49ers have already paid out essentially all of his money through bonuses. Debo Samuel has a league minimum base salary for his final season, 1.17 million. So at this point, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to just jettison him for financial savings. If he had to jettison him for roster room, then you would want to get back some draft capital in return. So if somebody's willing to give you some valuable draft capital, maybe the same amount of draft capital that you would spend to go get Davante Adams if there's a nominal price required by the Jets, maybe you'd do something like that. But cutting or trading or just cutting Debo Samuel for the sake of cutting him doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you're the 49ers, since he is cheap on the salary cap for the 49ers right now. $1.17 million base salary. They have lowered that all the way to the veteran minimum, and they've pushed the bonus conversion down the road. That's going to hit as dead money no matter what the 49ers at this point. Any more questions? We're in the Denver Airport Lounge. Hit that like button because we're doing this show with 700 people watching live on YouTube without a private room. I'm taking this live stuff to the very next level. This is intense stuff. Mike sending me some stuff from Tom Brady. Tom Brady said, my magic superpower wasn't how fast I could run. It was how fast I could diagnose what they were doing. I could figure out what they were doing it before they did it. I didn't snap the ball unless I knew my guys would be open. People aren't paying attention to the right thing. Yes, people are not paying attention to the right thing. It sounds like Tom Brady is talking about Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's superpower isn't how fast he can run on a straight line. It's how quickly he can move in the pocket. His superpower is also what Tom Brady is saying about himself, is how fast I could diagnose what they were doing It is about processing speed. Steve Young says it. All the great quarterbacks say it about Brock Purdy. Joe Montana has said it. Anyway, a fast processor works really well with a great separator. Remember how well Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers worked together impromptu? Kind of like you see it with Mahomes and Kelsey. Well, that's why we saw Purdy and Ayuk do so well in 2023 together. Imagine Purdy with another natural X receiver. That's the type of receiver that pairs really well with a great anticipatory thrower. That is why the 49ers will be interested. Who knows if it's possible? The Jets would have to make it possible. Probably not likely, but worth talking about, especially as I'm on the way from Denver now to Fresno. So hit the subscribe button because when I land in Fresno, there's going to be some Fresno State gear on the wall in the airport. That is Davante Adams' alma mater. If you want another video about Davante Adams, you want something shorter, something a little bit more concise, it's coming from Fresno in a little bit. Everybody, thanks for watching. It is time to sign off. Thanks to Michael Carroll. At $10, you're going to help me buy a beer once I leave the club here at the airport. Just kidding, but talk to you guys soon.